r/pettyrevenge ex called me wrong name, so I humiliated her at dinner. Actually, it's David, Sarah. You know, the guy who used to rub your feet every night while you complained about your job at the marketing firm. The words hung in the air like smoke from an expensive cigar, and I watched Sarah's face drain of color faster than wine spilling on white tablecloth. Her new boyfriend, some finance bro named Chad or Brad or whatever, looked between us with the confused expression of someone who just walked into the middle of a foreign film without subtitles. "Oh, sorry," Sarah stammered, her fingers tightening around her champagne flute. "I meant David, of course. It's just been so long since we... Since we what?" I leaned back in the plush leather chair, finally feeling like I had some control in this godforsaken situation. "Since we talked. Because you called me Marcus 3 times in the last 10 minutes, and we both know that wasn't an accident." This whole dinner had been her idea. Some twisted olive branch after 6 months of radio silence following our spectacular breakup. "I want us to be friends," she texted me last week. "Can we all grab dinner? I want you to meet someone special." What she really wanted was to parade her upgrade in front of me. The new boyfriend was everything I wasn't, tall where I was average, built like he lived at the gym while I lived at my computer, probably made more in bonuses than I made in salary. The type of guy who said things like, "Crypto is the future," and meant it. But calling me Marcus? That was a new low, even for Sarah. Marcus had been her ex before me, the one she'd spent our entire first 3 months together comparing me to. Marcus would have planned something more romantic. Marcus never forgot to put the toilet seat down. Marcus had such interesting friends. I'd heard that name so many times during our relationship that I'd started having stress dreams about the guy. I really didn't mean, Sarah tried again, but I was just getting started. "Remember how you used to do that thing where you'd accidentally call me by his name when you were annoyed with me? Usually right before you'd start that whole speech about how I needed to be more ambitious or spontaneous." I smiled at Finance Bro, who was looking increasingly uncomfortable. She has this adorable way of using past relationships as weapons. "You'll love it." "Dude," Finance Bro finally spoke up, his voice carrying that particular brand of masculine discomfort that comes from being caught in someone else's drama. "Maybe we should." "Oh no, please don't let me interrupt," I said, raising my water glass in a mock toast. "I'm just enjoying this little trip down memory lane. It's not every day your ex invites you to dinner just to passive-aggressively remind you that you were never good enough." Sarah's jaw clenched, that familiar tell that meant she was about to unleash one of her perfectly crafted verbal missiles designed to hit exactly where it would hurt most. But for once, I didn't care. After months of replaying our relationship in my head, analyzing every cruel comment and dismissive look, wondering if maybe she was right about all my shortcomings, something had finally snapped into place. She wanted to play games. Fine. But this time, I wasn't going to be the one left humiliated and questioning my self-worth. This time, I was going to remind her exactly why she'd worked so hard to forget me. The waiter chose that exact moment to appear at our table, probably sensing the tension radiating from our little corner of the restaurant like heat from a dumpster fire. "Is everything all right here? Can I get you anything else?" "Actually, yes," I said, not breaking eye contact with Sarah. "Could we get another bottle of that wine? The 2018 Pinot Noir. Sarah absolutely loves it, it's what we shared on our first anniversary. Remember, honey? Right before you told me about that dream you had where you were married to someone who had their life together." The waiter's professional smile wavered slightly as he glanced between us. "Of course, sir. I'll be right back with that." Finance Bro, I decided his name was definitely Brad, cleared his throat. "Look, David, right? I think maybe there's some unresolved." "Oh, there's nothing unresolved about it," Sarah finally found her voice, and there was the steal I remembered. "David's just having trouble accepting that some relationships end for good reasons." "Good reasons?" I laughed, and it came out sharper than I intended. "You mean like when you decided I wasn't driven enough because I preferred my stable job to chasing some fantasy startup dream? Or when you said my friends were boring because they didn't spend their weekends doing cocaine at rooftop parties in Soho?" Brad's eyebrows shot up. "Cocaine? Sarah, you told me you'd never." "I didn't do cocaine," Sarah snapped, shooting daggers at me with her eyes. "David's exaggerating, as usual. He has this tendency to blow things completely out of proportion." "Right, just like I exaggerated when I found those text messages from Marcus 6 months into our relationship." I turned to Brad with false sympathy. "Fair warning, buddy, she keeps all her exes on speed dial for emotional support. Very emotional. Very supportive. Usually around 2 a.m. when you're asleep." The color that had drained from Sarah's face earlier came rushing back in angry red splotches across her cheeks. "You're being pathetic, David. This is exactly why we broke up. This jealous, paranoid behavior." "Paranoid?" I felt something cold settle in my chest. "Is that what we're calling it when you literally had an emotional affair? When you spent 3 months telling Marcus how unhappy you were with me while pretending everything was fine?" The restaurant's ambient chatter seemed to fade around us. I was dimly aware that the couple at the next table had stopped their conversation to listen, but I was past caring about making a scene. "We never did anything physical," Sarah hissed, leaning forward. "And maybe if you'd actually listened to what I was trying to tell you instead of just assuming everything was fine, we could have worked things out." "Worked things out?" I shook my head. "Sarah, you literally moved in with him 3 weeks after we broke up." 3 weeks. But sure, let's pretend this was about communication problems. Brad was looking between us like a spectator at the world's most uncomfortable tennis match. "Wait, you moved in with Marcus? I thought you said you'd been single for 8 months before we met." The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, and I felt a surge of indication so strong it was almost dizzying. "Oops," I said softly. "Did I say something wrong, Sarah? Or should I call you, well, what should I call you? It's so hard to keep track of all your different versions." The waiter returned with our wine, took one look at the tension crackling around our table, and practically fled without a word. This was about to get very, very messy. Sarah's face went through about 17 different expressions in the space of 3 seconds. I watched her mental gymnastics routine as she tried to figure out how to dig herself out of the hole I just shoved her into. Meanwhile, Brad was staring at her like she just told him she was actually 3 raccoons in a trench coat. That's not. David, you're twisting things, she finally managed, but her voice had lost that confident edge. Brad, I can explain. 8 months, Brad repeated slowly, like he was trying to solve a math problem. You said you've been single for 8 months. Living alone, healing, focusing on yourself. I was focusing on myself, Sarah insisted, reaching for his hand across the table. He didn't pull away, but he didn't exactly lean into it either. Moving in with Marcus was just practical. Rent in the city is expensive, and we were trying to figure things out as friends. Friends, I snorted. Right. The kind of friends who share a lease and a bed and apparently an entire relationship while telling everyone they're working on themselves. We weren't together when I moved in, Sarah shot back, her composure cracking like ice in spring. It was complicated. Not that you'd understand complexity, David. Everything was always so black and white with you. The irony wasn't lost on me that she was accusing me of seeing things in black and white while literally lying to her current boyfriend about her relationship history. But I wasn't about to let her redirect this conversation into another lecture about my supposed character flaws. You're right, Sarah. I'm simple-minded. Which is probably why it took me so long to figure out that you'd been planning your exit strategy for months. I turned to Brad, who was looking increasingly like he wanted to be literally anywhere else. Did she tell you about the vision board? David, don't, Sarah warned, and there was real panic in her voice now. Oh, this is good, I continued, warming to my theme. Sarah makes these vision boards every new year. Cut out pictures from magazines, very Pinterest. The one she made in January of our last year together. Had pictures of downtown lofts, fancy restaurants, guys in expensive suits. I paused dramatically. Weird thing was, none of those suit-wearing guys looked anything like me. More like Marcus, actually. Brad's hand moved away from Sarah's like she was radioactive. A vision board for your relationship. It wasn't about relationships, Sarah said quickly. It was about career goals, lifestyle aspirations. And the perfect boyfriend to match, I finished. She showed it to me in March, said she wanted us to level up together. Asked if I'd ever considered getting into sales, maybe working out more, changing my whole aesthetic. I gestured at myself. Apparently, software developers don't photograph well for vision boards. The thing was, I'd actually tried. God help me, I'd actually gone out and bought new clothes, started going to the gym, even looked into a few sales positions that made my skin crawl. All because Sarah had made me feel like I wasn't enough as I was. That's not fair, Sarah's voice was getting higher, more defensive. I was trying to motivate you. You were stuck in a rut, playing video games every night, ordering takeout. I was happy, I said simply. I had a job I liked, hobbies I enjoyed, friends who didn't judge me for not having a 6-figure salary or a gym membership. But that wasn't good enough for you, was it? Brad was looking at Sarah like he was seeing her for the first time. So let me get this straight. You were with David, but unhappy because he wasn't ambitious enough. So you started talking to your ex Marcus about how unhappy you were. Then you broke up with David and immediately moved in with Marcus. But you told me you'd been single and soul-searching. It's more complicated than that, Sarah protested, but even she seemed to realize how weak it sounded. And now, I added helpfully, she's having dinner with both of us, calling me by her other ex's name. Seeing a pattern here, Brad? The look Brad gave Sarah could have frozen champagne. Brad set down his wine glass with the kind of deliberate precision that meant he was either about to explode or walk away entirely. Sarah, is there anything else you want to tell me? Because I'm starting to feel like I'm dating someone I don't actually know. Sarah's eyes darted between us, and I could practically see the wheels turning as she calculated her next move. This was classic Sarah, when cornered, she'd either go nuclear or play the victim. Sometimes both. You know what? She straightened in her chair, and I recognized the shift immediately. Here came the counterattack. I don't have to justify my past to either of you. David, you're sitting here trying to embarrass me because you can't handle that I moved on. And Brad, if you can't trust me enough to understand that relationships are complicated, then maybe we need to reevaluate things. I had to admire the strategy. Turn defense into offense, make everyone else the problem. It was the same move she'd pulled during our breakup when I confronted her about the Marcus texts. Oh, that's rich, I laughed. Now we're the problem for expecting basic honesty. Honesty? Sarah's voice pitched higher. You want to talk about honesty? Should I tell Brad about how you used to go through my phone when I was in the shower? How you'd interrogate me about every text message? Brad's attention snapped back to me, and I felt the first flicker of uncertainty. Because she wasn't entirely wrong, toward the end, I had been checking her phone. When someone you love starts treating you like a placeholder while they shop for an upgrade, paranoia becomes a survival mechanism. I looked at your phone twice, I said carefully. Both times after you'd been working late, 3 nights in a row and coming home smelling like someone else's cologne. See? Sarah gestured at me like I was Exhibit A in a criminal trial. This is what I had to deal with. Constant suspicion, jealousy, accusations. David turned into this possessive, insecure person who couldn't handle that I had a life outside our relationship. I felt heat creeping up my neck. She was rewriting history in real time, turning my reasonable concerns into character defects. It was masterful, really, take the natural consequences of her shady behavior and use them as evidence that I was the problem all along. Possessive, I repeated. Right. Like when I was possessive enough to ask why you were texting your ex at midnight. Or when I was insecure enough to wonder why you suddenly needed to work late every night after 2 years of being home by 6. I was building my career. Sarah shot back. But you couldn't handle dating someone with ambition. You wanted me to come home and play house while you spent another evening in your pajamas coding. Brad was watching this exchange like a spectator at a car crash, probably wondering how his nice dinner had turned into relationship court. But something in Sarah's tone, that familiar condescension when she talked about my work, lit a fuse I'd thought was long extinguished. My pajamas, I said slowly. You mean the clothes I wore while working from home at the job that paid for half your rent? The same job you bragged about to your friends when you wanted to sound like you were dating someone successful? Don't twist my words. Which version was the twist? I leaned forward, my voice dropping. When you told people I was a tech entrepreneur at parties, or when you told Marcus I was a basement dweller with no social skills? Because I saw both of those texts, Sarah. The restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Even the servers had started giving our table a wide berth. Sarah's face went pale again, but this time there was something dangerous in her eyes. You know what your real problem is, David? Sarah's voice dropped to that deadly quiet tone I remembered from our worst fights. You're still so hung up on me that you'd rather destroy any chance we have at being civilized adults than let me be happy. She turned to Brad, her expression shifting into something softer, more vulnerable. I invited him tonight because I felt guilty about how things ended. I thought maybe we could all be mature about this, but clearly David isn't ready for that. I felt my chest tighten as she played the card I should have seen coming. Saint Sarah, trying to do the right thing, victimized by her bitter ex who couldn't let go. It was the same narrative she'd spun for her friends, her family, probably half of Manhattan by now. Mature, I said, tasting the word like it was poison. Is that what we're calling it when you invite your ex to dinner just so you can humiliate him in front of your new boyfriend? Because that's what this is, isn't it? You wanted Brad to see me as the pathetic loser you've painted me as. Brad shifted uncomfortably. Look, maybe I should just. No, stay, I said, holding up a hand. Sarah went through all this trouble to arrange this little performance. We should let her finish. I looked directly at her. Tell him about the bet. If I thought Sarah had gone pale before, it was nothing compared to now. She looked like she'd seen a ghost, specifically, the ghost of her own shitty behavior coming back to haunt her. What bet? Brad asked, glancing between us. David, don't, Sarah whispered, and for the first time tonight, she sounded genuinely scared. Oh, come on. It's a great story. I felt something dark and satisfying unfurl in my chest. See, about a month before we broke up, Sarah went out for drinks with her girlfriends. Came home giggling about how they'd made a bet about which one of them would upgrade their boyfriend first. That's not, you're taking it out of context. The rules were simple, I continued, my voice steady despite the anger coursing through me. Whoever could trade up for someone with a better job, better apartment, better car, basically better everything, would win. The prize was a weekend in the Hamptons, paid for by the losers. Brad's fork clattered against his plate. Are you serious? Dead serious. Sarah told me about it that night because she was drunk and thought it was hilarious. Said she obviously wasn't participating because she loved me just the way I was. I let out a bitter laugh. Guess who paid for her Hamptons weekend 3 months later? Sarah's hands were shaking now. You're making it sound worse than it was. It was just stupid girl talk, meaningless. Meaningless? I turned to Brad. Ask her what category she put you in. Career prospects. Physical fitness. Trust fund. Sarah, Brad's voice was ice cold. Please tell me he's lying. The silence stretched so long I could hear the kitchen staff clattering dishes 3 rooms away. Sarah opened her mouth twice before any words came out. It wasn't like that. The girls were we were joking around, and yes, maybe there was some silly competition, but I never. Never what? Never sized me up like livestock. I felt years of suppressed rage bubbling to the surface. Never made spreadsheets comparing my salary to Marcus's. Never calculated whether Brad's finance job was worth more points than my tech career. Spreadsheets. Brad's voice cracked slightly. Sarah buried her face in her hands. Oh God, David, stop. Please. But I was done being the bigger person. Done protecting her feelings while she shredded mine. She color-coded them, I said conversationally. Green for upgrade potential, red for deal breakers. Very thorough. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear my own heartbeat. Sarah sat frozen with her face in her hands while Brad stared at her like she'd just confessed to running a puppy mill. I should have felt victorious, after all, this was exactly what I'd wanted. But instead, I felt something hollow and ugly settling in my stomach. Spreadsheets, Brad repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. You made spreadsheets about rating boyfriends? Sarah finally lifted her head, mascara smudged under her eyes. Brad, please, let me explain. What's to explain, he said, pushing back from the table. You've been treating relationships like some kind of commodity trading. How long have we been together, Sarah? 6 months. Have you been grading me this whole time? I watched the train wreck I'd orchestrated and felt a sick twist of something that might have been guilt. This wasn't just about getting back at Sarah anymore, I was destroying her current relationship in real time, right here in a restaurant full of innocent people trying to enjoy their overpriced pasta. It's not like that, Sarah said desperately, reaching for Brad's arm. Those spreadsheets were from when I was with David. I was confused, trying to figure out what I wanted. By scoring us like we're Olympic diving competitions. Brad shook her off. Jesus, Sarah. Did Marcus know? Does everyone know about this except the boyfriends? That hit me like a slap. Had Marcus known? Had they laughed about my scores over wine while I was at home thinking everything was fine? The possibility made my vision blur around the edges. No one knows, Sarah said quickly. It was private, just me trying to work through my feelings. By reducing human beings to data points, I finished. Very romantic approach to love, Sarah. The waiter appeared again, probably sent by a manager to check on the table that was single-handedly ruining the restaurant's ambience. Is everything all right? Perhaps I could. We're fine, Sarah snapped, then immediately softened her tone. Sorry, we need a few minutes. The waiter retreated, but I noticed how he lingered near the hostess stand, clearly keeping an eye on us. Other diners weren't even pretending not to stare anymore. A woman at the bar had her phone out, whether she was recording or texting someone about the drama, I couldn't tell. You know what the really sick part is? Brad was talking to Sarah, but loud enough that half the restaurant could hear. I actually thought you were different. When you told me about your ex who wasn't ambitious enough, I felt sorry for you. Thought you just had bad luck with guys. You did have bad luck, I said, surprising myself. You dated me. Both of them looked at me like I'd grown a second head. What? Sarah's voice was small, confused. You heard me. You want to know what your biggest mistake was? Dating someone who actually loved you instead of someone who'd play your games. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. You want a relationship that's all strategy and optimization. Congratulations. You found each other. Brad's face went red. What's that supposed to mean? It means you're perfect for each other, I said, pulling out my wallet. She wants someone who treats love like a business transaction, and you want someone who's been pre-approved by market research. Match made in hell. I threw $200 on the table, way more than my share, but I was past caring about money. David, wait, Sarah started to stand. No, I said firmly. I'm done waiting. Done explaining myself, done defending my choices, done pretending this was about anything other than you wanting to humiliate me one last time. I looked between them. Enjoy your relationship evaluation metrics. I hope you're very happy calculating each other's net worth. I turned to leave, my heart hammering against my ribs. Behind me, I heard Brad's voice, Sarah, I need to know. What was my score? I made it exactly 3 steps before Sarah's voice cut through the restaurant chatter like a knife. 87. I stopped walking. The entire dining room seemed to freeze, conversations died mid-sentence, forks paused halfway to mouths, even the soft jazz playing overhead felt like it stuttered. What? Brad's voice was barely audible. Your score was 87, Sarah repeated, louder now. Her voice had that hollow quality of someone who just jumped off a cliff and realized there was no going back. Out of 100. I turned around slowly, like I was moving through water. Sarah was standing now too, her napkin fallen to the floor, mascara creating dark tracks down her cheeks. Brad sat frozen in his chair, staring at her with the expression of a man watching his house burn down. 87, he repeated mechanically. Brad, please, let me explain the scoring system. The scoring system. His laugh was sharp, bitter. Of course there's a whole system. I should have kept walking. Should have left them to implode in private, taken my victory and gone home to nurse my wounds with whiskey and terrible Netflix shows. But something about the raw pain in Brad's voice, the way Sarah was frantically trying to calculate her way out of this mess, kept my feet glued to the expensive hardwood. What was I? I heard myself ask. Sarah's eyes snapped to mine, wide with panic. David, don't do this. What? Was. My. Score. The restaurant had gone completely silent now. Even the kitchen noise had stopped. I was dimly aware that we'd become dinner theater for 50 strangers, but I was past caring about public scenes or social norms or anything beyond the number that had apparently defined my worth for 2 years of my life. It doesn't matter, Sarah whispered. It mattered enough for you to calculate it, I said, taking a step back toward the table. It mattered enough for you to use it to decide I wasn't worth keeping. So tell me, what did 2 years of my life score in Sarah's boyfriend Olympics? Brad was looking between us like he was watching a tennis match played with hand grenades. Sarah, just tell him. At this point, what's left to protect? Sarah's face crumpled. 63. The number hit me like a physical blow. 63. Out of 100. A failing grade in any reasonable system. 63, I repeated, tasting each syllable. What was Marcus? David. What was Marcus? 91. The restaurant was so quiet I could hear the ice settling in someone's water glass 3 tables away. 91. Marcus, the golden boy, the standard I could never meet, had scored 91 points in whatever twisted algorithm Sarah used to value human beings. So I was worth 63 points for 2 years, I said, my voice unnaturally calm. But you stayed with me anyway. Why? Charity. Settling until someone better came along. No, that's not, Sarah was crying openly now, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no guilt, just a cold, crystalline clarity. Actually, I know why, I continued. Because 63 was still passing, wasn't it? Just barely good enough to keep around while you shopped for an upgrade. But not good enough to actually love. Brad slowly stood up, his movements careful and deliberate. I need to leave. Brad, wait, Sarah reached for him, but he stepped back like her touch would burn him. 87 points, he said quietly. Not even an A-. And I thought you loved me. The look he gave her before walking away was devastating, not angry, just profoundly disappointed. The kind of disappointment that comes from realizing you've been living in someone else's lie. Sarah and I stood there in the wreckage, surrounded by the shocked silence of strangers who just witnessed something they'd probably talk about for months. Are you happy now? She whispered. I considered the question seriously. Was I happy? I'd exposed her lies, shattered her new relationship, and finally learned exactly how little I'd meant to her. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like we'd both lost everything. Happy? I let out a laugh that sounded more like a bark. Sarah, I just found out that the woman I wanted to marry rated me like a used car. So no, I'm not exactly thrilled. She flinched at the word marry, and I realized I'd never told her about the ring. The one I'd been saving up for, the one that was probably still sitting in my sock drawer gathering dust and mocking me. You were going to propose. Her voice was so small I barely heard it. Before I found the spreadsheets, yeah. Had the whole thing planned out. That little Italian place you loved, the one with the terrible wine but amazing breadsticks. I shook my head. Good thing I discovered my 63-point rating first. Saved us both some embarrassment. The color drained from her face again. David, save it. I turned to leave for real this time, but then I heard her phone buzzing. She glanced at it, and her expression shifted from devastated to panicked in about half a second. What now? I asked, despite myself. It's Jessica. Sarah's voice was shaking. She says there's a video. My stomach dropped. What kind of video? Sarah's phone kept buzzing. Then mine started too. Then I noticed the woman at the bar, the one I'd seen with her phone out earlier, was smirking in our direction. Oh, shit, I breathed. Sarah was scrolling frantically through her phone, her face getting paler by the second. It's everywhere. Instagram, TikTok, someone posted it with the caption, "Rich girl rates boyfriends like Amazon products." My phone was blowing up too. Texts from coworkers, college friends, people I hadn't talked to in years. All asking variations of, "Dude, is this you in this restaurant video? How many views?" I asked, dreading the answer. 50,000 and climbing. Sarah looked like she was about to throw up. Oh God, my boss follows my Instagram. My mom's book club is texting her. David, this is going to ruin my career. For a split second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Then I remembered 63 points and the feeling passed. Maybe you should have thought about that before turning your love life into a spreadsheet, I said. This is your fault. Sarah's voice cracked. You're the one who brought up the bet, the scoring, all of it. You destroyed my relationship and now you've destroyed my reputation too. I destroyed your relationship. I stared at her incredulously. Sarah, you destroyed your relationship the moment you decided to treat Brad like a stock portfolio. I just made him aware of it. You're vindictive and petty, Anne. And worth 63 points, apparently. I pulled out my phone as it buzzed again. This time it was my boss. At 8 p.m. on a Saturday. That couldn't be good. Mr. Chin. I answered, already knowing this conversation wasn't going to go well. David, I need you to come in Monday morning. We need to discuss some concerns that have been brought to our attention. I closed my eyes. The video. The video. Our clients don't appreciate their software developers becoming viral sensations, especially for personal disputes. I understand. I hope you do. We'll talk Monday. He hung up. Sarah was watching me with something that might have been guilt. Your job, she asked quietly. Probably gone. I looked around at the restaurant full of people still staring at us, phones out, probably posting follow-up videos. Along with any chance of this dying down quietly. Sarah's phone rang. She looked at the caller ID and went white. It's my mom. For the first time all night, we were both on the same side, the losing side. Sarah's phone kept ringing, the shrill sound cutting through what was left of my adrenaline high like a rusty knife. She stared at it like it was a live grenade, her thumb hovering over the decline button. Answer it, I said, surprised by how tired my own voice sounded. Putting it off won't make it better. She looked at me with something between gratitude and horror, then swiped to accept the call. Hi, Mom, she said, attempting normalcy and failing spectacularly. I couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but I could see Sarah's face crumbling in real time. Her free hand gripped the edge of the table so hard her knuckles went white. No, Mom, it's not. I can explain. What do you mean Margaret saw it? How did Margaret? She closed her eyes. Yes, I know how this looks, but... My own phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from my sister Katie. Holy shit, is this really you? Mom's freaking out. She saw it on Facebook. Facebook, David. When did Mom join Facebook? I scrolled through my notifications with mounting horror. The video had somehow made its way from TikTok to Instagram to Facebook to what looked like Twitter. Someone had even uploaded it to YouTube with the title, entitled Woman Destroys 2 Relationships with Boyfriend Rating System, Must Watch. The comments were extensive. User RedPillTruth 2023, this is why you never trust women with your emotions, bro. User Coffee Shop Philosopher, 63 points. King, you dodged a bullet. She did you a favor. User Sarah K_marketing, OMG, I work with this girl. She's always bragging about her boyfriend's salaries in the break room. That last one made my stomach clench. Someone from Sarah's office had recognized her. This wasn't just going viral, it was getting personal. Mom, please don't call Dad, Sarah was saying into her phone, tears streaming down her face now. I can handle this myself. No, you don't need to fly down here. Mom, please. She pulled the phone away from her ear as what sounded like shouting erupted from the speaker. Even I could make out words like humiliation and how we raised you and what will people think. Your parents. I asked when she hung up. Dad's cutting my trust fund. Her voice was hollow. Mom's too disappointed to speak to me right now. Apparently, Mrs. Henderson from their country club called to ask if they'd seen the video of Sarah acting like a common trollop. I almost laughed at that. Almost. Mrs. Henderson said, trollop. Mrs. Henderson loves using words from 1952. Sarah slumped back into her chair. This is a nightmare. My career is over. My family's disowning me. And for what? Because you couldn't handle being broken up with like an adult. The accusation hit me wrong, sparking the anger I thought had finally burned out. Like an adult. I leaned forward. Sarah, you emotionally cheated on me for months, lied to your new boyfriend about your relationship history, and tonight you called me by your ex's name just to watch me squirm. Then you had the audacity to act like I was the problem for calling you out on it. So you destroyed my entire life as payback. I told the truth. Everything I said tonight was true, and you know it. My phone buzzed again, this time it was my landlord. My stomach dropped. You want to talk about adults? Adults don't rate their partners like homework assignments. And adults don't air their dirty laundry in public restaurants. Sarah shot back. You made it public the moment you posted those scores in your group chat. Did you really think something like that would stay secret forever? Sarah's face went ashen. How did you know about the group chat? The question hung in the air between us like smoke. Because I hadn't known about any group chat. I'd just made an educated guess based on her reaction to the whole situation, but apparently I'd hit closer to home than I'd realized. What group chat, Sarah? Nothing. There's no group chat. But it was too late. The panic in her eyes told me everything I needed to know. Oh my God, I breathed. You shared the scores with your friends, didn't you? The silence was answer enough. How many people, Sarah? She was shaking her head frantically, but her phone kept buzzing with what I could only assume were damage control messages from the friend group that apparently knew my score before I did. It wasn't like that, she whispered. We all shared things sometimes, it was just. How many people? My voice cracked like a whip across the restaurant. The few diners who hadn't already left were now openly filming us, probably hoping for part 2 of whatever viral goldmine they'd stumbled into. The core group, she said finally. Jessica, Amanda, Chloe, and Madison. But David, they swore they'd never tell anyone. 4 people. I felt something cold and sharp settle in my chest. 4 of your friends knew that you rated me a 63 while I was buying you anniversary gifts and planning a future with you. The memory hit me like a freight train. Jessica's birthday party, 2 months before our breakup. The way the conversation had died when I walked into the kitchen where Sarah and her friends were clustered around someone's phone. How they'd all looked at me with these weird, pitying expressions that I chalked up to too much wine. They'd been looking at my score. Oh Jesus, I muttered, pieces clicking into place. The birthday party. They were all so weird around me that night. Amanda kept asking if I was happy and Jessica wouldn't make eye contact. David. They knew. I was standing again, my chair toppling backward. They all knew you thought I was barely passing grade while I was standing there like an idiot, trying to make conversation about your promotion. Sarah's phone rang again. This time the caller ID read, Amanda Chen, and I could see Sarah's hand trembling as she declined the call. Let me guess, I said, my voice deadly quiet. Amanda's calling to tell you the videos reached your extended friend group. How long before everyone we know has seen your little scoring system? My own phone lit up with an incoming call from my best friend Mike. Then another from my brother. Then my college roommate who I hadn't spoken to in 2 years. This is spiraling, Sarah said, stating the obvious with the kind of panicked clarity that comes right before a complete breakdown. We need to do damage control. Delete social media accounts, maybe release a joint statement explaining. A joint statement? I stared at her incredulously. Sarah, there's a video of you admitting you rated me 63 points out of 100. What exactly are we going to explain? That you were conducting relationship research? We could say it was taken out of context. Stop. I held up my hand. Just stop. You can't PR your way out of this one. But even as I said it, I could see the wheels turning behind her eyes. Sarah wasn't the type to go down without a fight, especially when her carefully curated image was on the line. She was already calculating angles, crafting narratives, figuring out how to spin this disaster into something manageable. You're right, she said suddenly, her voice shifting into something smoother, more controlled. We can't explain this away. But we can control the narrative. What are you talking about? Sarah pulled out her phone and opened the camera app. We're going to make our own video. A heartfelt apology, 2 exes who've realized they've been handling things immaturely. We'll take responsibility, show growth, maybe even laugh about how silly the whole scoring thing was. Are you completely insane? Think about it, David. Right now we're both the villains in this story. But if we get ahead of it, show we're better people who've learned from our mistakes. She was already checking her makeup in the camera, wiping away mascara streaks. We could turn this around. I watched her transform before my eyes from devastated ex-girlfriend back into the calculated social media strategist who'd probably caused half this mess in the first place. That's when I realized Sarah hadn't learned anything tonight. She was already planning her next performance. You want to make a video, I repeated slowly, like I was talking to someone who'd suffered a head injury. Right here. Right now. While we're literally surrounded by people recording us anyway. It's perfect timing, Sarah insisted, her voice taking on that manic energy she got when she was deep in crisis management mode. We're already viral. We might as well control the message. I looked around the restaurant at the sea of phones pointed in our direction. The hostess was having what looked like a heated conversation with the manager, both of them gesturing toward our table. Other diners were whispering behind their hands while blatantly filming us. Sarah, listen to yourself. You just lost your boyfriend, probably your job, your family's furious, and your first instinct is to double down on social media. My first instinct is to survive, she snapped back. Something you might understand if you'd ever had anything real to lose. The insult landed like a slap. There she was, the real Sarah, the one who came out when her back was against the wall. The one who'd rather burn everything down than admit she might have been wrong. Right, I said quietly. Because I'm just a 63-point loser with nothing real to lose. How could I possibly understand consequence management? My phone rang again. This time it was my mother, and I knew with absolute certainty that answering it would somehow make everything infinitely worse. But ignoring it felt like cowardice, and I'd been a coward in this relationship long enough. Hi, Mom. David Matthew Richardson. The full name. I was officially in the deepest possible trouble. Please tell me that this video everyone's sending me is some kind of horrible joke. I wish I could, Mom. That woman gave you a grade. Like you were a term paper. In the background, I could hear my father asking what was going on, followed by my mother's voice explaining the situation with the kind of outraged precision that only comes from a retired high school principal who's discovered her child has become an educational cautionary tale. It's complicated, Mom. Complicated? David, the entire town has seen this video. Mrs. Patterson called me 20 minutes ago because her granddaughter showed it to her on the TikTok. Mrs. Patterson doesn't even know what TikTok is. Sarah was still messing with her phone, apparently serious about her damage control video idea. She'd moved to the other side of our table to catch better lighting from the window, completely oblivious to the fact that her plan was absolutely insane. Mom, I need to call you back. Don't you dare hang up on me, young man. Your father wants to drive down there and have words with this girl. I could hear Dad in the background. Let me talk to her, David. I'll explain about treating people with basic human decency. The image of my 70-year-old father confronting Sarah in some misguided attempt to defend my honor was somehow both touching and terrifying. Please don't let Dad come down here, I said quickly. This is already enough of a disaster without. Without what? Without your family supporting you when some shallow girl treats you like garbage. Mom's voice was rising. David, I raised you better than to let people walk all over you like this. I know, Mom. I'm handling it. By making a scene in a fancy restaurant. Because that's what the video shows, you airing your business in public like some reality TV show. She wasn't wrong. I glanced around at the phone still recording us, the manager now walking purposefully toward our table with what looked like security behind him, Sarah practicing her sincere apology, face in her front-facing camera. This had gone from petty revenge to public humiliation to career suicide to family crisis in the span of 2 hours. And Sarah wanted to make it worse by filming more content. Mom, I really do need to go. I think we're about to get kicked out. Good. Come home. We'll figure this out together. She hung up, leaving me standing in the wreckage of what had started as a simple dinner, watching my ex-girlfriend prepare to turn our mutual destruction into content. The manager cleared his throat behind me. Sir. I'm going to need you both to leave. Now. I turned to face the manager, a thin man in his 50s who looked like he'd rather be literally anywhere else. Behind him stood 2 security guards who were trying very hard to look professional while obviously being entertained by the whole situation. Of course, I said, pulling out my phone to silence another incoming call. I'm sorry about all this. Sir, we understand that personal matters can be intense, the manager said diplomatically, but we have other guests to consider, and frankly, this situation has gotten out of hand. Sarah finally looked up from her phone preparation. We're leaving, she announced, then had the audacity to add, could we possibly get our dinner boxed up? The manager's eye twitched. I think it's best if you just go. As we gathered our things, I noticed the couple at the table next to us leaning in to whisper furiously. The woman kept glancing at Sarah with undisguised fascination. Excuse me, she said suddenly, holding up her phone. Are you the spreadsheet girl? Sarah froze like a deer in headlights. What? From the video. My daughter sent it to me an hour ago. You're already a meme. The woman seemed genuinely excited about this. There's one where they put your face over a teacher giving grades, and another where. Please don't, Sarah interrupted, her voice cracking. But the woman was already scrolling through her phone. Oh, this one's funny. Someone made a Yelp review template but for boyfriends. 3 stars, good listener but terrible dresser, would not recommend for long-term dating. I watched Sarah's face cycle through horror, humiliation, and what looked like genuine despair. For a split second, I almost felt bad for her again. Almost. Ma'am, the security guard interjected, we need them to leave now. As we walked toward the exit, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, saw the video. Dodged a bullet there, bro, Marcus. I stopped walking so suddenly that Sarah bumped into me. What now? She asked. I showed her the text. The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might faint. He's texting you. How did he even get your number? Mutual friends, probably. The important question is why he's texting me. I looked at her more closely. Sarah, please tell me you didn't rape Marcus after you got back together. Her silence was deafening. Oh my God, you did. You scored your ex-boyfriend who you emotionally cheated with. I started laughing, but it wasn't a happy sound. What was his rating the second time around? Still 91, or did living with him knock off a few points? David, stop. No wonder he's texting me. He probably saw the video and realized he was just another data point in your relationship algorithm. My phone buzzed again with another text from Marcus, coffee tomorrow. We need to talk. Sarah grabbed my arm. You can't meet with him. Why not? Maybe he has some insight into your scoring methodology. I could finally understand what made me worth 30 points less than the competition. Because she stopped herself, but the damage was done. He's what, Sarah? The security guards were getting impatient, gesturing toward the door more insistently. Other diners were blatantly filming our conversation now, probably hoping for part 3 of the viral saga. He's vindictive, Sarah finally whispered. If you two start comparing notes. Then what? The truth comes out about how you've been treating relationships like a scoring competition. I think that ship has sailed. As we finally made it outside into the cold night air, my phone rang again. This time it was my boss's boss. At 9 p.m. on a Saturday. This was about to get so much worse. I declined the call from my boss's boss, but the damage was already done. The fact that C-level executives were calling me on a Saturday night meant this had escalated beyond awkward personal drama into potential corporate liability. Sarah was still gripping my arm, her perfectly manicured nails digging into my jacket. David, please. If you meet with Marcus, if this gets any bigger. Any bigger. I gestured at the restaurant windows where faces were still pressed against the glass, phones recording our exit. Sarah, we're already the main character in everyone's Saturday night entertainment. How much bigger can this get? My phone buzzed with the answer, a notification from LinkedIn. Someone had tagged me in a post about maintaining professional boundaries in personal relationships. My work profile. My actual, professional LinkedIn profile was now connected to the boyfriend rating video. Oh, fuck, I breathed, scrolling through the comments. Colleagues, clients, people I'd interviewed with years ago, they were all seeing this. Worse, they were commenting. Richard Hayes, senior developer at TechFlow Solutions, yikes, David. Hope you're doing okay, man. Jennifer Kim, project manager at Datadyne, this is why I keep my personal life private. Prayers up for everyone involved. Marcus Thompson, investment analyst, looking forward to our conversation tomorrow, David. Sarah saw Marcus's comment at the same time I did. Her face went completely white. He's commenting on your LinkedIn, she whispered. He's making this professional. He's making it professional. I stared at her incredulously. Sarah, my coworkers are seeing a video of my ex-girlfriend explaining why I scored lower than her other boyfriends. It was already professional suicide before Marcus showed up. The restaurant's valet stand was creating an awkward bottleneck as other diners tried to leave while sneaking photos of us. I heard someone whisper, that's them. The spreadsheet couple, like we were minor celebrities at a red carpet event. We need to get out of here, Sarah said, looking around frantically. My car's in the garage across the street. As we started walking, my phone rang again. This time it was Katie, my sister, and her timing couldn't have been worse. David, what the hell is happening? Mom called Dad, Dad called me, and now there's some video of you having a breakdown in a restaurant. I'm not having a breakdown. Ryan's little sister just sent me a TikTok where someone auto-tuned your voice saying 63 points into a song. A song, David. You're a meme. I stopped walking. Someone made a song. It's got like 200,000 likes already. Ryan thinks it's hilarious, but I'm worried about. A car honked as we crossed the street. The driver had their window down and was filming us with their phone. Spreadsheet girl, they yelled. What's your Uber rating? Sarah made a sound like a wounded animal. Katie, I'll call you back, I said, hanging up just as we reached the parking garage. This is spiraling completely out of control, Sarah said, fumbling with her parking ticket. We need a plan. A real plan, not just damage control. The plan is simple, I replied, watching another notification pop up on my phone, this time from Facebook, where apparently my college roommate had shared the video with the caption, remember when David's biggest problem was choosing his major? We go home, delete our social media, and pray this dies down before we both lose everything. Sarah's phone started ringing. The caller ID read, Dad, and she looked like she was about to be sick. He never calls, she whispered. He only calls when something's really wrong. She answered with a shaking voice. Hi, Daddy. Even from 3 feet away, I could hear the shouting. This was about to get infinitely worse. Sarah's face went through every stage of grief in about 30 seconds as her father's voice boomed through the phone speaker. I couldn't make out exact words, but the tone was unmistakably that of a man who'd built a successful law practice on intimidation and was now turning those skills on his daughter. Daddy, please, if you'd just let me explain, Sarah tried, but was immediately cut off by another barrage of what sounded like legal terminology mixed with parental disappointment. My own phone buzzed with a text from Marcus, check your email. Thought you should see this before tomorrow. With a sense of impending doom, I opened my email app. The subject line read, FWD, interesting methodology, and the sender was Marcus Thompson. Below that was a forwarded email chain between Sarah and someone named Dr. Elizabeth Hartwell. The timestamp was from 6 months ago. Sarah, I said slowly, who's Dr. Elizabeth Hartwell? Sarah's conversation with her father stuttered. What? How do you know that name? Because Marcus just forwarded me an email chain between you and her. From when we were still dating. The color that had been slowly returning to Sarah's face disappeared entirely. She mumbled something to her father about calling him back and hung up, which immediately triggered another incoming call that she declined. Let me see that, she demanded, reaching for my phone. I held it away from her and kept reading. What I found made my stomach drop into my shoes. Jesus Christ, Sarah. You were getting academic advice on relationship optimization. From a psychology professor. The emails laid out everything in excruciating detail. Sarah had reached out to Dr. Hartwell, apparently her former professor from business school, asking for guidance on maximizing relationship outcomes through data-driven analysis. The professor had suggested treating partner selection like market research, complete with scoring metrics and comparison charts. It wasn't like that, Sarah said desperately. Dr. Hartwell was just helping me understand my patterns. Your patterns? I scrolled down to an email where Sarah had literally attached a spreadsheet comparing me, Marcus, and 2 other guys I'd never heard of across categories like financial potential, social status, and long-term viability. You sent our relationship stats to your fucking professor. She's a relationship expert. I was trying to make better choices. By treating human beings like a case study. My voice was getting loud enough that other people in the parking garage were starting to stare. How long were you collecting data on me, Sarah? First date. First kiss. The first time I told you I loved you. Sarah's phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize, but she looked at it with pure terror. That's Dr. Hartwell, she whispered. Oh God, she must have seen the video. If this gets back to the university, if they think she was involved in some kind of unethical research. Unethical research. I stared at her. Sarah, you turned me into an unwilling test subject. Did you get my consent for this little experiment? Did Marcus know? Do any of your boyfriends know they're part of your thesis project? The email chain kept going. Monthly updates on my performance metrics. Adjustments to scoring criteria. At one point, Dr. Hartwell had suggested Sarah consider controlled variables, essentially, dating multiple people simultaneously to better compare results. Tell me you didn't, I said quietly. Didn't what? Tell me you weren't dating other people while we were together. For research purposes. Sarah's silence was answer enough. My phone started ringing. The caller ID showed my boss's boss's boss, the CEO of our company. On a Saturday night. At 9:30 p.m. This wasn't just career suicide anymore. This was career nuclear warfare. And somewhere in the distance, I could hear sirens. I let the CEO's call go to voicemail and looked at Sarah, who was now crying openly in the fluorescent lighting of the parking garage. The sirens aren't for us, are they? I asked, though I already knew the answer from the way she was staring at her phone in horror. Someone called the police, she whispered. Jessica just texted. They said we were having a domestic disturbance at the restaurant. As if on cue, 2 squad cars pulled into the garage, their lights painting the concrete walls in alternating red and blue. I watched the officers get out, checking their phones, probably looking at the same viral video that had destroyed both our lives in the span of 2 hours. Ma'am, sir, the first officer approached us with the weary expression of someone who dealt with social media drama before. We received reports of a disturbance. Are you the couple from the restaurant video? We're not a couple, Sarah and I said simultaneously, which would have been funny under different circumstances. Right. Well, we need to ask you both some questions. As the officer began taking our statements, my phone buzzed with one final text. This time it was from my landlord. David, I'm sorry, but after tonight's events, I think it's best if you find other living arrangements. Nothing personal. I started laughing. Actually laughing, right there in front of the police officers and Sarah and a handful of people who'd followed us into the garage to film the finale of our disaster. What's funny? The officer asked, clearly concerned about my mental state. Everything, I said, wiping tears from my eyes. Absolutely everything. I came to dinner tonight thinking the worst thing that could happen was an awkward conversation with my ex. Instead, I've lost my job, my apartment, and apparently my dignity, all because I couldn't let someone call me the wrong name. Sarah looked at me like I'd lost my mind. David. No, Sarah. I'm done. I turned to the officer. Sir, I haven't committed any crimes tonight except poor judgment. We had a loud argument in a restaurant, it got filmed, and now we're both paying the consequences. There's nothing else to investigate here. The officer nodded slowly. As long as nobody feels threatened or unsafe, we can wrap this up. I feel stupid, I said honestly. But not unsafe. After the police left and the last of the gawkers got bored, Sarah and I stood alone in the parking garage. The silence stretched between us like a canyon. So what now? She asked finally. I thought about it. My career in tech was probably over, at least in this city. My apartment was gone. My family was mortified. But for the first time in months, I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt. I was just empty. Clean, somehow. Now I start over, I said. Somewhere else. Somewhere nobody knows about spreadsheets or scores or viral videos. David, I'm sorry. For all of it. The scoring, the lies, tonight. I know you are. But sorry doesn't fix this. I looked at her one last time, really looked at her. You know what the worst part is? I would have been happy being a 63 for the rest of my life if you just loved me anyway. But you couldn't do that, could you? She didn't answer, which was answer enough. I walked away from Sarah Caldwell for the last time, leaving her standing alone under the harsh garage lights with her phone full of missed calls and her carefully constructed world in ruins. 6 months later, I was coding for a small startup in Portland, where nobody cared about my internet history and my boss had never heard of TikTok. Sometimes, starting over is the only way to win.